You're tuned into the Counterflow Podcast, home of dissident voices,
unapproved opinions.
But you gotta get ready.
You ready?
Now here's your host
and humble narrator,
Buck Johnson. Let's go.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast. As always, I'm your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson, coming to you out of Lockhart, Texas. Thank you guys for the compliments on the new intro. And now that we've got the video and audio, last week I told you guys that the audio was done by my friends Mano from the Study of Stuff podcast and Study of Stuff podcast group friend, Post-Feedum. Nailed that audio intro, and right with it, with this video intro that we've got going now from Dissident Media, the company which I am now a part of, Dan Smots from the System Is Down podcast. You know, we keep saying podcast, which I guess technically they're not anymore. Whatever. Dan Smots from the System Is Down. Fantastic work. I barely gave him any direction, just a touch of a few things I'd like incorporated into this. And look what he did. Matched it up with that audio from Mando and Post-Feedum. And I'm very happy with it. So yes, as you guys saw at the intro, I am part of dissidentmedia.net. Dissident Media. Stay tuned for more details on what we're doing at Dissident Media. But for this episode, my friend, your friend, Charles Haywood is back on the show. A lot of you understand that I used to strictly talk politics on this show. I don't talk about specifically politics too much anymore. But when I do, I love getting Charles Haywood on. Orthodox Christian, head man, maximum leader, we should say, over at the Worthy House. He's just an all-around good fella. We love talking politics, and sometimes offline, he and I will still talk Orthodox Christianity. He loves history, loves books. You know what he does over at the Worthy House. And so you can't avoid politics when the most massive changes in the political landscape are happening before our very eyes, by far the most in my lifetime. And this is something I've been paying attention to since, I suppose, the late 90s, maybe mid to late 90s, let's say. And this is something like I've never seen. So we got to cover it. We will have to keep covering it at some point. It's just something else, isn't it? It's something else. Like Charles says, he wakes up every day and it's like, he's elated. We're going to get to things. If you don't love politics, don't worry. We are not worshiping idols. We're not putting all of our faith and trust in princes and sons of men. But that's who runs the political part of our country right now. Yes, we understand that this is at large a spiritual battle. We're talking the political side of things. And so to do that, my friend of the show, he's been on several times now, Charles Haywood, maximum leader over at the Worthy House. Charles, how are you, sir? Good to see you.
I am just uniquely pleased to be back here. This must be the third or fourth time, and this is one of the podcasts I enjoy the most. So,
well, thanks. I the people like having you on, and we can go back to the last time that you were on here, which I was prepared to do. That was October 25th, 2024. As we record now, it's February 20th, 2025. Compare and contrast where we are politically right now from October 25th, 2024.
Well, I have to start with my mea culpas on my predictions, which only, if charitably viewed, hit 50%. I was right that Trump won and won handily and so on, but I was wrong about the subsequent left violence. And that's really a topic we can get into if you're interested, though. In a sense, it's done to death. Or more precisely, I think nobody really knows the answer as to why that doesn't happen or what's going on with the left, and there's various theories. But we can talk about that. But every day I was just thinking when I was working out this morning, I was thinking I should put up a tweet or something, since I seem to have gotten into the bad habit of randomly posting on X, which I'm going to cut back for Lent. I was posting something like, every day I get up, and if it's not like heaven, it's like, limbo or the Elysian fields or something, some temporal state of bliss where all the things that I ever wanted, if they haven't all come true, they're at least within sight of possibly coming true. Though one should not get ahead of oneself or overconfident or over-optimistic. But certainly, I was thinking back in the day, I was excited when George W. Bush and Dick Cheney were the new president and vice president, and how the things aren't even comparable.
No.
It's not even an orders of magnitude thing. It's
right.
It's of quality, not of degree. And that, there's a lot of work to do. And there's a lot of potential things that can go wrong, et cetera, et cetera. So you shouldn't get too ahead of oneself, but merely where we are has changed permanently where we might be in the future, even if that doesn't go exactly how we want it. Because it's, and this is an overdone cliche as well, but it's like the emperor's new clothes. You can't go back. There's no universe in which the left has the control where they say you can't use the word illegal immigrant. You have to say undocumented person, or I can't say retard in public. I put a tweet up the other day when I went to the store. There were self-serve scanners, and it was screwing up, and the lady comes over and fixes it. I'm like, "What's wrong with the machine?" And she says, "The machine is retarded." We can't go back to the age when they can control us like they could in the past, even if there's many things needed to be done, and we're not going to get all of them or what have you. So, at the highest level, and I'm not saying anything that I don't think you doubtless think as well, that it's just amazing. Every day I wake up and I'm like, this is great.
Yeah, it's funny looking back at, I have been in and around, let's say, dissident circles since the late 90s, and kind of into some right-wing stuff, libertarian stuff, conspiracy stuff, or in and around that sphere. And I remember not voting for George Bush, but being like, well, it could have been worse. And just when they discussed they were going to take a look at Social Security, I thought, oh, this is almost like a win. That's how small the victories were back then. And now they're talking about slashing massively departments and budgets and all of this. It's even from a libertarian perspective, which I had one for a long time. I mean, a lot of the good libertarians are kind of in awe about what the heck's going on, and especially with the foreign policy stuff. It looks like maybe he's about to broker a peace deal between Putin and Zelensky. I don't have faith, and this is a good thing, that Zelensky will be in power for very much longer.
It's not a peace deal between Putin. Zelensky and Ukraine are irrelevant to this year.
Yes.
It's our war, and we started it, and we get to end it. And the Europeans and Zelensky are irrelevant to it. Elon Musk was retweeting Aaron McIntyre this morning.
Yes, I saw this.
Which Aaron made, as he usually does, a pithy point about how the Europeans decided to forgo their security so they could have infinite welfare states, infinite migrants, and now they're going to have nothing at all. No security, infinite. They will keep the infinite migrants, but they won't have their welfare state, and they won't have any security because you're stupid. And
yes,
stupid games. That play stupid games win stupid prizes, as they say.
Yes. It seems we can discuss what's going on with the left. I know it's almost a cliche discussion because no one has maybe put their finger on it. One thing it feels like is the losing side is stuck arguing in a, let's say, 2016 or 2012 paradigm, and the winning side has moved so far past all of that it feels like the losers are kind of stuck in a small sandbox, like flinging sand at the air and throwing twigs, and everyone else has moved on. Even if I take a scroll down my Facebook feed of the leftist musician friends I've got, they're yammering about the Gulf of America and how to go into Google and complain, and maybe they'll switch it, and then like putting Trump pictures with a Hitler mustache, and you guys don't have anything. Like, there's no violence. There's no massive protesting that accounts to anything. It's weird. I was so used to being on the losing side since I've been an adult as far as politics go. I was kind of used to it. Now I haven't gotten used to seeing what was the regime cheerleaders looking like little kids, and they're on the losing side, and they literally have nothing.
It's very strange. I actually started writing and took a couple stabs at writing a long analytical piece about this, but it's kind of like punching jello, and things keep changing. That is, the left keeps losing, and sinking into more and more irrelevancy. And the reasons for that are really opaque to me. And of course, it's ahistorical. I mean, I based my predictions of violence on historical parallels. And so clearly somewhere in there's a failure, probably relating to either the exhaustion of left ideology, which would be the ideal case, or the elevation of incompetence within the left hierarchies, combined with the elimination of the support of a lot of rich and powerful people because the left decided to throw their lot in with the Hamas cretins. Which obviously pissed off a lot of very powerful and very left-wing Jews, and so they decided to stay home from the latest round because they decided that at least Trump wasn't going to cheer on Hamas, which is a perfectly reasonable position to take. So I don't know what it is exactly is going on, and I would have expected, even if you'd asked me a month ago or 2 months ago, more coherent pushback. But I've decided to analogize it in the short term to something like an infantry line broken by a cavalry charge, where you're on a big open field, and then the infantry line breaks and they can't regroup, and so they just run down and speared by the cavalrymen in the back. And so that seems to be what's happening to the left. Of course, it's all dependent on something that I don't think anybody really expected. There was some glimmerings of it, but they seemed like a false dawn in many ways. I don't think anybody expected the degree of aggressive competence out of the Trump team, him surrounding himself with people who are, and being able to recruit people. I mean, given the way his last set of advisors was treated, the way he was able to recruit people to do these things. I mean, Musk is kind of the Jupiter of this, in the sense that he absorbs a lot of the hits, the asteroid hits that would otherwise hit planet Earth. But given that they tried to put any relevant Trump advisor in jail last time, you would think he would have a lot of trouble getting people. And all these people know that if the left ever gets power again, it's going to be 10 times as bad. But he managed to get all these people, and they're sticking to their guns, and there's no pussyfooting around. So I don't know why, though. I mean, I really don't.
Yeah, it's part of it seems like it's such a blitzkrieg of news and things that he's doing coming out of his administration that it's going so quick and so fast. They don't have one single item to focus on, because if they try to focus on the immigration thing, well, the next thing he's talking about auditing the IRS, auditing the Pentagon, auditing Social Security, et cetera. There keeps being, then he makes jokes about Canada being a state that pisses them off. Then even like something as minuscule as the Gulf of America. Again, I scroll my Facebook feed. So many people are stuck on that stupid thing. And it's going so quick. It's a deluge of news from his side that's basically winning, that they can't focus on something. So it does seem that let's focus on Elon Musk. He really wants to be president, and they kind of come up with these corny cliches, and he did a Hitler salute and all of this, and they're trying, but it doesn't really stick with him either, because he's more powerful than all of them.
Well, I call this dense pack. Do you remember the 80s and dense pack?
No, I remember the 80s, but not this.
Dense pack was the reason that America's land-based nuclear missiles were clustered together. And the theory in dense pack was that in a nuclear war, since you can't time nuclear warheads precisely, the first nuclear warhead to detonate on a silo would blind the rest of the nuclear missiles coming in, allowing them to be launched even in a first strike. Whether that's true, I have no idea, but that was and let's hope we don't find out. But that was the theory, dense pack, to locate all of these assets together so that you couldn't, one thing exploding prevented you from dealing with the rest of them. And it's the same kind of thing.
Yes.
There's more to it than that. Like, there was an article in the New York Times yesterday, not that I subscribe to the New York Times or regularly read it, but occasionally I'll use archive sites to read articles. And they had an article complaining that Trump was evading the spirit of judicial orders that have banned him from, for example, cutting funding. Now, leaving aside that judicial orders have no spirit, they're not legislation. They're very narrow and usually very narrow. What the Trump people have apparently done, and the article was hilarious if you read it because it was so butthurt, but they've gotten these smart people to troll through the infinite pages of legislation where Congress have basically granted infinite powers with respect to administrative agencies to the president. And they simply say, well, this order says we can't do X, so we're going to do X, but through Y path. That's a totally different path under a different legislative authority. And you can't respond to all these things. I mean, not to speak of the fact that their argument is I think, in almost all cases, a slam dunk. The president does, in fact, have this authority because they always anticipated that the president would always be, if a Republican president, unable or unwilling to actually use this authority in any way, and a Democratic president with the active leadership and cooperation of the 99% plus left-wing bureaucrats use this to accomplish stuff. None of this was ever considered, which is, this is not an analogy original to me. I think it was, are you familiar with Asimov's Foundation trilogy?
Yes. So
do you remember in this, I think it's the second book, the psychohistory, this idea that you could predict the history based upon basically mainframe computer analysis of the past, is upset by the appearance of a unique individual called the Mule, who basically upsets the apple cart of history by being completely impossible to predict.
Mm-hmm.
But Trump, and this is, again, I wish I can remember who came up with it.
This is a good analogy.
It might have been Z-Man on the Z blog.
Yes.
Trump is the Mule.
Yes.
He's something unique, something the system, the regime, the uniparty never considered could result. And of course, when you combine that with Musk, who is also a Mule type figure, and you combine them as allies, I've been doing this on X, so I apologize for doing it again. My totally failed predictions about violence are slightly offset by the fact I did predict 2 years ago that Musk would turn against the regime. I didn't think it would be quite this fast or this dramatic. But these things are unique. I mean, yeah, okay, fine. Maybe it was predictable, maybe it wasn't. But I think that's part of what confuses all of us, that it's unique to us too. It wasn't like our master plan. We just woke up. And even like until January 20th, we had no idea this was going to happen. I mean, I asked before the inauguration, I asked a guy who was in a position to know what he was hearing about the coming executive orders. And his response was thermonuclear. But I'm like, okay, fine, what does that mean? Apparently he was right.
It was right. Which of the appointments to his cabinet, which ones stand out to you as the most important or possibly game-changing, let's say?
Well, a lot of them are. I mean, in their different areas, and leaving aside Musk and his kind of supra cabinet position, the obvious ones. I mean, Hegseth is doing what Hegseth promised to do. Marco Rubio turns out to have decided to become no longer little Marco, but to become like something that's the exact opposite of what he was. I mean, that probably shows that he doesn't have any real principles, but who cares? I mean, it's like implementing the Trump train. Who cares?
Right.
I mean, this is one of the points I've made many times, probably with you, which is that this always happens in history. The elites decide to hew to whatever the latest is, and Marco Rubio is no dummy. He sees which way the wind is blowing. So if he wants to join the party, more power to him. We'll see how Kash Patel does. I assume he's going to be confirmed. I like RFK Jr. Right? Okay, fine. He likes abortion and so on, but the fact is that he's doing the right things within the ambit of what he's been told to do, and. I'd like him to restrict abortion and things like that. But the fact is that, unfortunately, far too many Americans are addicted to abortion, and RFK Jr., even if he wanted to, isn't going to solve that problem. So it's not a knock on him that he's not doing it, because really there's no angle there. Mm-hmm. And so there are probably others. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
Tulsi Gabbard being labeled and put on a security list as a Russian asset. Now now in charge of the national intelligence is, I think I'm surprised. I'm delightfully surprised by Hegseth. I wasn't sure. I think it's Hegseth, Tulsi, and RFK. And under RFK, some of the medical personnel that he's putting over the NIH and things like that, those have the ability to be history changing, in my opinion, because it was bad in 2020. It could have, had this regime not happened, it could have been way, way worse. And all of a sudden, it's like we've been given a grace or some sort of reprieve to flip the script. And it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I don't really follow the details of Tulsi Gabbard or what the implications there are. I mean, the right people seem to be pleased with her and the wrong people seem to be pleased with her, like, that nitwit Barry Weiss.
Yes.
I'm really developing an intense distaste for.
Yes.
But she's one of these AstroTurf figures who's always is artificially in my face because back my money and so on.
Right. Great new sponsor, tigerfitness.com/counterflow. That's your code to get in, support my podcast, and fuel your resistance. We all talk about standing up to people, standing up to the man, all of these things. Well, you can't do it when you're a couch potato. And let's face it, it's not vanity. It's taking care of your body, your soul, your mind. All of these things. Tiger Fitness provides high-quality supplements and training gear to keep you strong, independent, and ready for whatever comes next. Again, no weak bodies, no weak minds. At Tiger Fitness, there are kind of people. They reject corporate poison. They skip the junk peddled by big box brands and pharma-backed fitness scams. Tiger Fitness is built for those who take control of their own health and strength. I think that's you. I think that's me. I think that's all of us, guys. Self-sufficiency starts with strength. The state, the bad guys, the evil spirits, they want you weak, tired, and dependent. Tiger Fitness helps you break free by optimizing your performance and resilience. Again, you can support a business that is supporting me, supporting this podcast, and it stands for you. No woke BS, no corporate virtue signaling, all of the stuff that we hate, these guys hate as well. And so they are not like that. When you want to get in shape, they've got workouts on this website. They've got a lot of supplements, great energy drinks, all of these things that I'm kind of a part of most days of my life. It's for serious people who value discipline, taking care of your own, your family, and your body, self-reliance, and all of these things. tigerfitness.com/counterflow. As we've been speaking, Kash Patel was indeed confirmed. I just read.
Okay, awesome.
And so what does this mean for people that, let's say, were in the former regime's intelligence agencies? What should it mean and what will it mean? Is there a contrasting element there?
Well, this is one of my, I know I keep returning to my failed predictions, but if I had problems sleeping, I would lie awake at night agonizing over my failed predictions. But obviously the intelligence apparatus of the United States regime is extremely large, extremely powerful, extremely well-funded, and has had decades of doing the ability to do quite literally whatever it wants, including, no doubt, any number of things which are the grossest crimes, both domestically and abroad. So you have a set of people like that who all of a sudden are existentially facing loss of their livelihood, loss of any future livelihood, because all the sources of funding they would normally turn to in the private sector in some cushy job making $500,000 a year to put out reports about how Ukraine is full of angels. Those are gone. And the very real possibility that Kash Patel is going to be breathing down their neck with criminal investigations. So my claim was that this combination of things, leaving even aside the thought of criminal investigations, which wasn't really on people's radar screen, just the mere loss of a fraction of the things they appear to be definitively losing, would cause these people to take action to overthrow Trump by violence, either openly or indirectly. Yet all they do is sit around and do nothing. Now, that doesn't mean that somewhere deep in the bowels of Langley people aren't plotting things, but there's no evidence that any of these people are doing anything, even though thousands of these people who have always viewed themselves as the lords of the universe their entire lives are about to be destroyed. They can't pay their mortgage. Their wives are going to divorce them. Whatever. So, I mean, this is a long way of saying that I just don't get it. I mean, historically, a group of people like this would coordinate in greater or lesser numbers, maybe in multiple different groups, in order to take action in order to prevent this existential threat from being any more existentially threatening than it already is. But what they do, as far as I can tell, is complain on Facebook and complain to lawyers that you need to do something by going to court. And when obviously the Trump administration has a plan for that as well. So I guess where I come out on a lot of this stuff in this kind of interim stage is it's historically anomalous on every level. And not 100%, but on many levels. And I find this very disturbing because, as I was telling someone the other day, like someone like Yarvin is a theory cell. I like the memes where he says, like, your regime overthrow works in practice, but does it work in theory? And I'm a history guy. And so, but my history knowledge is not really being very informative of the future as it usually is. And I find this deeply disturbing. So I guess I'll have to.
Yeah, well, they might have tried. And then Trump turned his head and looked at a chart. Maybe that was the attempt. I don't know.
That was highly likely to have been an attempt. Whether we'll ever know is a different question. But that was long before the truly existential nature of the Trump threat to these people became evident. I mean, I made the claim that it was existential simply based upon his desire to end the Russia-Ukraine war and the great Ukrainian power. But what Trump is doing goes so far beyond that. I mean, taking away this the source of funding that all these people rely on for when they're out of the government to lead comfortable lives. I mean, these people don't want to live on their government pensions. They want to have jobs that are paid for by the American taxpayer, doing things that are part of what they did in their government career. And those things are disappearing and they're not coming back. I mean, I don't think, maybe they think they're coming back, but so things are way worse for them than you would have thought. That is, you could plausibly make the claim last summer, Trump may win. And but we'll just do the same thing we did last time. It'll be 4 years of annoyance, and then we'll be back to whatever. And Kamala Harris sucks anyway. I mean, this is different than the kind of bizarrely stupid claim I see certain people on the internet make that the regime wanted Trump, but the regime could have gone away with making its peace with Trump while hobbling him, or at least they could have. That would have been a reasonable tack to take. That we can do that. But now it's 10 times worse, 100 times worse. And yet everybody's passive, at least to all appearances, they're passive. Beats me.
Before Trump was elected, I saw, now, again, this is some of the same people I see talking about the Gulf of America is a violation to all humanity. But that Doge, Elon Musk, this is a fake made up thing. This is such a joke. This is just, it's not even real. And then once Trump's elected and Doge is actually doing a lot, seemingly, now this isn't fair. He's not elected. And it's like, wait, I thought he didn't have any power or it was a joke. And all of a sudden now you're crying about how it's too powerful. What are your thoughts on that? And also, are you aware of how he implemented Doge as far as putting it in, just renaming a department that Obama already had?
Yeah. I mean, as to the former, I mean, these people are all just crying to each other. As you say, I mean, I actually created a Blue Sky account called Trump Rules Forever.
Oh my gosh, goodness.
I don't actually post so no one's noticed, but I go there occasionally. And, it's just people crying to each other, just like you say. That's all they're doing. And the example of I am aware that they renamed the U.S. Digital Service, I think it was, or repurposed the U.S. Digital Service into Doge. But that's just an example of what I was talking about earlier, which is they've very cleverly taken the fact that everything has been let to sprawl over the past decades and use that to their advantage. And since there's no universe in which Congress is going to cut back on these previous grants of authorization, even if Congress voted to do so, Trump could veto it. And they're certainly not going to get a supermajority to do that. I mean, Trump could, like his old joke, shoot someone on Fifth Avenue, and then Congress couldn't pass a bill because too many people in Congress know on which side their bread is buttered. So
Yes.
they literally have 4 years, assuming Trump voluntarily steps down in 2028, and who knows, maybe he'll decide to stick around. But at least 4 years and then 8 more years of Vance doing these exact same things to them over and over and over and over as Musk's AI-driven teenagers search their way through these endless documents looking for new routes they can use to gain power. This is a real bad scenario for them.
Yes.
Which is great. I'm all for it. I'm here for the lulls.
And and certain circles I run in, I often thought, if they could ever weaponize right-wing political autists, watch out. And it does appear that that's what's happened.
I mean, the big question, maybe you're getting to that, is will Trump be successful in throwing out all the illegals? And by illegals, I mean that broadly, so-called asylum seekers, so-called refugees. Anybody who's not a citizen needs to go, and obviously birthright citizenship needs to go. I mean, birthright citizenship is never going to be revoked retroactively. So even if birthright citizenship is not formally ended, which I certainly hope it is, if you get rid of all the people, you kind of solve the problem going forward. Anyway, but 30,000 people a day need to be leaving the United States. And I'm curious, that's really, I think, the thing that we haven't seen enough, not enough movement, because I don't know what the plans are, and the Trump administration seems to have a plan for everything. Presumably the hope is that enough people will self-deport, just make it unnecessary to run around rounding people up. I was thinking, so for example, you may not know this, but I know this because I work at a church food pantry. Well, this is actually a soup kitchen, different than a food pantry. But so this soup kitchen serves people in the city of Indianapolis. It's at a Methodist church, so it's tied in some ways to my church. So occasionally I go down there and volunteer, and it's mostly homeless people and so on. But every month or two, a guy comes, I think invited by the church. I don't know who he works for or anything. It's been a couple months. I need to look into it more. But he sets up a table at the soup kitchen where he offers out free phones with unlimited permanent free phones with unlimited permanent service, and $10 tablets with unlimited permanent service, Android in both cases, to anybody who can show any evidence whatsoever of any form of government support of any kind. So I'm assuming, like, for example, illegals get all these things. And as a self-deportation example, Trump signed an executive order today saying no more money to illegals. Someone needs to go and cut that off to illegals to make sure that illegals are not able to get free phones. They're not able to get, and obviously, so there's tons of illegals in every place who get free apartments. And those are presumably paid for by places like so-called Catholic charities with our money. So if you cut all those things off, eventually those people will self-deport. No phone. You need to also pass a law or a regulation that illegals are not allowed to have to send their children to public schools. Right. Enough of that, and remittances, tax remittances, 95%, whatever. People will self-deport. I'm just assuming they have the will and the plan to do this, but I don't actually know that.
Sheath Underwear has come aboard to sponsor the Counterflow podcast. How about that? At sheathunderwear.com/counterflow, or just go to sheathunderwear.com and use Counterflow at checkout for a discount. Men, do yourselves a favor. Elevate your daily comfort with Sheath Underwear. The innovative dual pouch design provides unparalleled support and separation, ensuring each part of you has the space it deserves. Experience the sophistication, finally, of a design that respects your anatomy. The moisture-wicking technology sets a new standard in comfort. This advanced system not only keeps you cool, which you need when you live in Texas, especially, most times of the year, but it prevents chafing, odor, making every movement feel effortless. So, once again, go to sheathunderwear.com/counterflow or use the promo code Counterflow at checkout. Experience the perfect blend of comfort and functionality with Sheath. Did you happen to see Deborah Birx, any of the quotes from her on Piers Morgan recently?
No.
For the audience who's asking who that is, she was basically the head of the COVID task force outside. She was like second in command beyond beneath Fauci. And she just was on saying, yeah, we knew from the beginning these mRNA vaccines were not like the typical vaccine where you take it and then you are protected against the sickness. We knew that. And we made a mistake by targeting children with it. And it should have been the older population with high risk, whatever they want to call that. That's who should have been targeted. And it's like, wait a sec. If I would have said that, well, I did say that, and my episodes got taken off just a few years ago. You can't come out and say that now and nothing happened. You just, like, you were in charge of this stuff. What do you mean we should have said? You had the opportunity to say, this is not. In fact, they changed the definition of vaccine in the dictionary. And so everyone's on our side's like, wait, this isn't a vaccine. We're getting flagged. I had 2 in a row and my page is going to be destroyed. And now that her side has lost power, she wants to say this in an interview like it's just matter of fact, and she just moves along and sweep this under the rug. Can something or will something or should something happen to the people who were in charge of that regime, the COVID aspect of it?
Yes, something should happen, obviously. And by something, I don't mean no longer being eligible for government employment. Right. I mean ruination, prison, exile, confiscation of all of their assets. I mean, not just the COVID regime. There's an infinite number of people who that needs to happen to. I mean, all the U.S. attorneys, for example, being fired should be put in prison to the extent that they had anything whatsoever to do with the persecution of the heroes of January 6th. I mean, that's kind of a commonplace. I'm not sure that's the best use of resources right now. I think consolidation of power is necessary. I certainly hope that someone is creating a list of all of these people. And I think that list should be open sourced and available to the public, and names and documents should be uploadable so that everybody knows who these people are, so they can be, for example, denied employment and what have you. That said, with respect to Birx or any of these people, you never really get true justice.
Right.
And spending an excessive amount of time on the idea of justice is a mistake. What we're looking for is punishment in order to prevent future activities. And for that purpose, exemplary punishment rather than punishment of everybody who is guilty is probably sufficient. I mean, yeah, sure, we should have justice, but looking for 100% justice is always a mistake. I always remember the words of King Stephen. Oh, well, not the words up, but so King's in. Here's my history geekery. So once upon a time in the early 13th century, there was a civil war in England called the Anarchy. Yeah, are you familiar with this?
Only from you.
Okay, well, maybe have I used it? This is my quote about King Stephen. Have I used this for you before?
I think it's possible, but there's always new listeners. No, we can get back into it.
I'm starting to repeat myself. Well, in short, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle said about King Stephen, he was a good man and mild and gentle and did no justice. So that was the summation 100 years later or 200 years later of his reign. And so we should be with the aim of doing justice and preventing future injustice.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, there's this fallen human instinct in me that wants to see worse things done, but fair enough. Did you see J.D. Vance's speeches in Europe recently?
I almost never watch video, but I certainly saw the excerpts from them and read parts of them and what have you. So I got the gist of them, certainly.
I think I've asked you this in the past, but my opinion grows stronger every time I see him speak. What are your thoughts on him and where he's at in his career and what he's representing right now?
Well, I'm a huge J.D. Vance fan. I remember I got a bunch of grief right after he was picked as vice presidential candidate. I said something like, J.D. Vance is the best possible candidate. Anyone who says otherwise is not a serious person.
I agree. I agree with you on that.
He certainly validated that. I mean, I can't say much more about him other than, it's not like I know the guy personally. So it's you had another question there that I was going to answer, but he certainly has he shows great promise. And I remember I was on it was an IM 1776 live stream at one point with Thomas 777.
Yes.
And he got all angry at me.
I saw this.
All angry at me because I was like, and he's like, JD Vance is a tool of the deep state. Yeah, okay. So I like him. I like Thomas fine, and so I'm not going to put on Twitter saying I was right, you were wrong, but that's true.
Yes. I listened to that stream. I also like Thomas. I happen to agree with you on JD Vance. Something else I want to ask you about. I assume you're familiar with Paul Gottfried.
Yes.
And Andrew Breitbart. We're all familiar with this. Politics is downstream of culture. And a long time ago, I think Paul said this outside of my own show, but back when the show I think was called Death to Tyrants still, I had him on and he said, no, culture is downstream of politics. And I think that's on full display right now. What are your thoughts on those quotes?
Well, a couple of interesting things. I mean, I remember that Breitbart quote, and from day one, I thought it was completely wrong. So I am a huge Paul Gottfried fan.
Yes.
In fact, my mother, who's Hungarian, like Paul's Hungarian as well. My mother has been a huge Paul Gottfried fan for 40 years, and I actually told him that back when Thomas Fleming was also involved in Chronicles.
Yes,
and I told Paul the other day that my mother would build a statue of you if she could manage it. So I'm sure he was duly flattered by that, but it's true. So I'm a huge Paul Gottfried fan. So I regard that. Apparently the show is all about me talking about my predictions and what I think and what other people think about me. So I apologize for the solipsistic nature of my discussion today, but it's pleasing to. I certainly agree with Gottfried on that. I mean, it's only someone who is. I'm not sure why Breitbart said that, and I can see why you might think that in the context in which he said that. But I mean, it's entirely obvious that while there is some dynamic interplay there, the main flow is that culture is way downstream of politics. And this relates to the ongoing argument. You even see some people still now saying, they're putting the woke away, or they decided to put the woke away. And the woke is in some senses and in some areas being defeated, certainly. But it's a lot in the cultural aspects of the woke, which are kind of the most visible in some places. Those are much farther downstream of the political actions taking place. So I think you would expect to see in 2 or 3 years, if the continued success, the dying of kind of the woke cultural things, which has been dialed back a little bit, certainly, but that's mostly just tactical retreat. So I think it's definitely true that the culture is downstream of politics. My question is, when am I going to open up my Amazon Prime feed and see based stuff about white people, as opposed to what I see on Amazon, which is hate on white people and exalt any other type of person than a straight white man. I'm curious, for example, do you ever watch Reacher? I don't watch a lot of TV, but I have seen the Reacher series on Amazon. Have you seen this?
I'm aware of it. I've not seen it.
So it has this kind of roided up guy who's a commie in life. But like the first season was actually pretty good. Pretty right wing, like low bar, but pretty right wing for Amazon. The second season was kind of silly, women getting in bar fights, back to back with this roided up guy, fighting with him a lot. Okay, it's kind of silly and stupid. I just noticed this morning the third season is out. So I'm curious to see if the third season is just a bunch of like woke crap, which I suspect it probably is, or whether it's kind of returned to the first season. But I mean, there's no indication that film, for example, is turning away from the woke. So to answer your question, I think we'll see that culture really is downstream of politics when major films and TV become not just not woke, but explicitly right wing.
Once a month, my supporters of this show and myself and a special guest have a Zoom meeting. It's not recorded. It's not posted. It's just private. It's between you guys, the guest, and myself. I do this because it means a lot for you guys who support me by showing me that this show means a lot to you. I love talking with you. I look at it as like a benefit for people that support the show, but it's really a benefit for me. I get to know you guys and have an off-the-record discussion with our guest. And, sometimes topics you don't want to necessarily have all the ins and outs discussed online, if you know what I mean. So to be in this group, please go to patreon.com/counterflow and donate $5 or more per month. And it gets you in this club. We do it once a month. It's a great time. It's great people. They're all smarter than me. So that's an upgrade from what you're used to. I can tell you that. The guests are always guests that people want to hear from. A lot of you guys will be familiar with many of the guests. Father Turbo's done it. Father Deacon Ananias has done it. David Patrick Carey's done it. My own priest, Father Ignatius, has done it. Father Moses McPherson's done it. It's a very good time, and I think you guys would enjoy it. If you love this content, please go to patreon.com/counterflow, $5 or more per month. Thank you. They're taking quite a hit. I was just, I'm going to have someone on the show discussing what is seemingly happening before our eyes, the death of legacy media, and Disney's taken a massive hit. What are your thoughts on, and I made a post about this, I think I predicted, maybe my prediction will be right. I actually made one, Charles. We will never see a presidential debate again on mainstream TV, NBC, ABC, etc. What are your where is the legacy media right now? I understand we don't watch it and it's not trustworthy. It seems to me it's dying. 57% hit is what MSNBC's taken.
Really?
57% of their viewership is gone.
Well, it's a great question. I think my response used to be that the legacy media was still important because it was able to set the narrative, particularly for people like the boomers.
Right.
But that seems to fall apart because they can no longer set the narrative for some of the reasons we've touched on already, and also the rise of X and so on. So they can set the narrative for a declining set of people, but even that declining set of people is becoming increasingly irrelevant. Like the boomers, bizarrely, were the most Democrat-leaning of groups when typically they're seen as more Trumpian. And with every day that passes, the ability of the legacy media to influence and create even a sub-narrative goes down one pine box at a time, or one trip to the nursing home at a time. So I think that you don't want to overstate it. Elon Musk is always crowing, X is the media now, and what have you. But like, just thinking about it, I posted this the other day that it used to be kind of a benefit that you could go to Twitter and look at the trending, and you could see what it was the regime had decided today you were to believe, for what was today's messaging, today's narrative elements.
Yes.
And now, like, I can't think of, since the inauguration, a single narrative thread that the legacy media has managed to spin into anything.
Right.
I mean, all their efforts, you mentioned, for example, Elon Musk's supposed Nazi salute. I mean, that came and went. I mean, in the past, they could have just written these things for weeks. And I don't think there's any, I don't know what MSNBC is talking about, I guess, but I don't think, maybe it's just my lack of awareness. Maybe if I talk to like my mother-in-law, who's kind of a boomer, no, I guess she's older than a boomer, but whatever. She watches the nightly news like some of 3 people who do in the country, and she must believe the narratives that they're putting out, whatever those narratives are. Trump is out of control, and Ukraine is being betrayed. But those narratives don't have any reach anymore.
Right.
Like I don't feel obliged to talk about it, except in the sense that instead of saying, well, Ukraine's a nice country, I say Ukraine sucks and it's a fake country, and that's what's going on. Now shut up. Next question. And in the past, you would have to spend all your time debunking the narrative, and now you're like, oh, whatever. I guess they're saying some stuff over there in their corner, but who cares? And certainly the most powerful people in the country are adopting our view of the narrative. So the narrative is becoming, it's like being a furry. I don't know anything about being a furry, but presumably there's a whole subculture of being a furry where you do pervy things and you deserve to get beat for. But the normal person spends no brain space on what it's like to be a furry. And the same way, it's rapidly becoming the normal person spends no brain space on what the legacy media's desired narratives are.
Right. There's our clip. There's the advertising clip right there. Yeah, I didn't know much about them until I was in a Pennsylvania airport a couple of years ago, and I kept seeing adults with furry tails and things on their head, mouse or horses or whatever. And I'm like, what on earth is there's furries in this airport. And I started looking it up, and sure enough, a large convention was happening in Pittsburgh or whichever airport I was flying out of. I can't remember, but there's my experience. So they do exist.
I've never seen it in real life, so you're ahead of me.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I kind of wanted to, as someone who interviews people, I kind of wanted to like, what is this? But I don't think it fits this show. The new one of the new things I have seen messaging from, I suppose, the legacy media has been, and this happened a bit leading up to the election because they started to sense their own weakness, and ironically, they're the ones pushing this. We need a Joe Rogan. The left needs a Joe Rogan. Ironically, I kind of look at Joe Rogan as centrist with left leaning, although he was at the inauguration and whatnot. But part of the issue, in my opinion, I want to get your thoughts on this. You can't have a Joe Rogan firmly with current leftist talking points because they can't hold up to a 3-hour discussion. They're made for quick sound bites, bumper stickers, headlines, with no actual element of like let's dive deep into this, because it's built on a house of bullshit, to be quite honest. So I don't see a leftist Joe Rogan as being possible. It doesn't make any sense to me. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think of Joe Rogan as center right, mostly because he's open-minded and therefore necessarily is pulled in the direction of reality. I mean, he has his own preconceptions and so on, and yes. But I like him fine. I think he's interesting. But as far as the left, Joe Rogan, I mean, the problem for the left is that anybody that they put up as a talking head is necessarily the equivalent of a televangelist.
Yes.
That it's something. I object to the idea that leftism is a religion, and I've analyzed this before. Like, for example, if you won't sacrifice for your supposed religion, but all you ever get is benefits, then it's not a real religion. I mean, you could argue that communism or whatever he would have called it for Lenin was a religion, but for the average modern leftist, it's not a religion at all. It's just an ideology that grants you benefits, which is beneficial, but that's for us. But that's a different topic. So that. A talk show, a Rogan-type talk show for leftists would be a televangelist type thing, preaching to the converted about why it is that they're superior, rather than an exploration of reality. And it would have to be tightly constrained. I mean, if you're Joel Osteen, I don't follow televangelists, but if you're one of these televangelists, you're serving up a product to people who know what to expect and want to be reinforced in what it is, and maybe told to move more in the direction that they know they should be moving in anyway. With Christianity, that's moving more in the direction of loving your neighbor or what have you. With leftism, it's moved more in the direction of trans your kids. But that's a very limited appeal, and it's even more limited appeal nowadays when people can see that that's the losers are adhering to this ideology. You can't. I mean, it's kind of a restatement of what you said from a slightly different angle. You can't have something like that explores reality,
right?
Because they don't want to hear reality. Reality is it's like they were complaining. People were bitching and moaning that RFK says there's too sexist because some judge apparently was lecturing Trump lawyers that some people have different sets of chromosomes, and that's just an insane conversation. As someone pointed out, that's like saying that there's people with one hand, so therefore it's normal to have one hand. I mean, it's not. But they don't want to hear it. So I'm given to understand. I think wasn't there some weird like Your Mama or something podcast that Kamala Harris appeared on, like for basically aimed at like sexually promiscuous single women or something.
Now that you say that, there was. I wasn't familiar. The irony is that I wasn't familiar with that podcast. I can't even think of what it was called. I'm aware that she did, and they kept saying, "Oh, she was on the second biggest podcast below Joe." I'm like, I've never even heard of it.
But they do have a podcast. But I'm assuming that podcast is just what I was describing, which is warm fuzzies for sexually promiscuous women, and people, or people who desire to be sexually promiscuous but are too obese to actually accomplish that. And you could put that as the quote. And that strikes me as an example of what you were talking about earlier, which is useless talk designed to make people feel good on Facebook, drawing Hitler mustaches on people. We need our own Joe Rogan. Well, a guy who's 5'5" needs to be 6'5", but he's not going to be, is he?
Right. Yeah. There's the issue with egalitarianism. What are pitfalls? I mean, I think you and I both agree things are better than you anticipated with this, with what's happening. Pitfalls moving forward for people in our camp to watch out for, beware of.
It's a good question. It's one I should have given some more thought to, because I spend all my time in the Elysian fields thinking about how good it is rather than... there's obvious pitfalls. Trump dying, though Vance, it looks like he would largely, or maybe even better continue it. But those are structural pitfalls rather than things that we can choose to avoid. I think I can't really think of any. I mean, I think the I'm just. Do you have any that I can comment on? Rescue me here.
I always think of a pitfall as myself getting too wrapped up into something that's unnecessary for me to get wrapped up into, personal pitfalls. I would say for the Trump administration, any falling into the pitfalls of Zionism is always a pitfall for people on the right, although I'm somewhat optimistic so far as to, I understand there's a game that has to be played, right? I'm not one of these people on the right that's like, oh my God, he talked to Bibi Netanyahu, we're done. I understand there has to be games played, and there is still a base of evangelical Christians that largely support Trump that want to be placated to, I suppose. I don't know. But I would say that's always a pitfall for people on the right. I'm more optimistic with J.D. Vance in there and with Tucker Carlson in his ear, in Trump's ear, that some of that stuff can be avoided.
I think so. I mean, in the Ukraine war, I think there was a real risk that Trump would, and there was some indication of this at the time, that Trump would take a excessively pro-Europe, pro-Ukrainian position. But I think we can write that one off.
We can write that off, yes.
And the Israel thing is always going to be a bit of a stickler in America, but at some level, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you can have eternal low-level war in the Middle East, and that's unfortunate, but it doesn't really, you can accomplish all the other goals you want, and you can even shrink the American empire massively without that becoming the existential focus. And the Jewish involvement in American politics is shifting. Not wholly, but a lot of, I'm touching this earlier, a lot of wealthy, powerful Jews who in the past were reflexively joined the left wing. They may not be right wing, but they've decided that maybe that isn't the right way to go, to throw their wealth and power behind some of these movements. And like Bill Ackman isn't my buddy, but he's a smart guy who is willing to involve himself with Trump and Musk and important issues. And it's like RFK. I mean, this is a cliche again, but you need to avoid the purity spiraling. And it's related to no enemies on the right. I mean, Ackman or even Musk. I mean, I guess Musk probably counts as on the right now. We're here to get things done. And the way to get things done is to form coalitions with the right people, not to talk about how, London bankers funded the Bolsheviks, which isn't even true.
Fair enough. All right. Let's get you to plug away. I started this so excited, I didn't even give you your normal intro. Although at this point, people already know who Charles Haywood, maximum leader at the Worthy House is, but plug the site, plug anything you'd like to, really.
Right. So I'm Charles Haywood. I write at theworthyhouse.com, where I also have podcast versions of my writings, which are mostly book reviews and some analytical pieces. I just wrote one that got a bunch of traction, attacking gross domestic product as a method of human flourishing. And I am also on X, at the Worthy House, where I spend entirely too much time, which I intend to dial back in Lent, because if I don't, I'm afraid I'll go to my priest and he'll tell me to get off X entirely. So I need to avoid that by voluntarily getting off. He's never said anything. I have no idea if he knows that I'm on X, but I doubt if he would approve of the amount of time I spent on X.
And Charles, for those that don't know, is Orthodox as well. Does he read, or is he aware of the Worthy House?
Oh, he's aware of the Worthy House. He's read a bunch of stuff, but he's only aware because a bunch of the left-wing parishioners demanded that he discipline me in some way. But he
really?
Well, yeah. I mean, discipline is not necessarily the right word. I try not to get involved or in politics at all at the church level, at the local church level, or for that matter, in hierarchy type politics, or Orthodox Twitter or what have you. But from the priest's perspective, they went to him and complained, I believe, that I was a loose cannon who might start causing him trouble about like a few kind of psychotic Orthodox people have in the past. He managed to satisfy himself that was not the case. So and he quoted the Gospel of Matthew to them, where they go, if you have a disagreement with your brother, you can go talk to him. But not a single one of those people in the church has ever said a word to me. But I don't do politics at the local level, or in church. I mean,
you were in danger of being labeled some sort of right-wing ortho bro.
Yeah, maybe. I have to say that more than one young man at the church who has started coming. This is like a lot of Orthodox churches. We have a large influx of converts. I've had 3 or 4 conversations where they're like, "Oh, you're that Charles Haywood. I listened to your podcast." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's me. That's me." And they're all like astounded that I'm actually at their church.
Like a local celebrity. Very cool. Okay. All right. Well, Charles, as always, this has been good. Love chatting politics with you. Love having you back on, as do the people. So thanks for being here, sir.
I'm pleased to be here, as always. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that discussion with the great Charles Haywood. Go check out the Worthy House. He's always got great stuff going on over there. Next week is someone who's not been on in a long time, and I know you guys will love him. I know a lot of you already do love him. I know a lot of you love Death to the World. Does that give you a hint at who's coming on? It's not Justin Marler. Who's running Death to the World now? So until next week, you guys check out Dissident Media. Check out the sponsors for this show. Join the Patreon at patreon.com/counterflow. Check out the Telegram group. Follow me on Twitter at BuckRebel, BuckRebel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. All of these good things. And until next week, you guys have a good one. Like the sound of the Counterflow Podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.
This has been